I never learned about passive voice in school. Oh, I don't mean to imply that I wasn't taught. I'm fairly sure I was. I just didn't learn it. I get this note a lot from people who read my books, especially from people in my life who are really good at being line editors, rather than content editors. My mother and my sister are not as much interested in editing my story, especially my mother. My mother is not really that way, but she's really good at catching line edits, things like that. But both of them are very good about calling me out on my use of passive voice because I do it all the time. For those who are unfamiliar, I'm not the best person to teach you. My basic understanding is that you're putting the object first before the subject. The ball was thrown by the person, whoever, that kind of thing. And I think in my head, I know not to do this, but I also have a kind of strange speaking style in my real life, and that translates into my writing. I will sometimes phrase things in strange and weird ways, and sometimes people think that's fun and funny in my everyday life, and that's great. I think that is something that makes me feel good, and I like that I don't talk like normal folks. And I write oftentimes the way that I talk, especially in character voice, but sometimes in narration as well. And that can lead to me having a style with my writing that sometimes includes passive voice. Maybe I'll phrase something a certain way because I think it's more funny to phrase it that way, but it doesn't read as well if I'm not saying it out loud. Does that make sense? And it's tough. It's tough to find that line between here's a style and here's bad writing, because definitely there's going to be some overlap. I have definitely run into the problem where my style as narration just feels like someone who doesn't know how to write properly with good English and stuff. I mean, I was dealing with this as recently as 2 weeks ago when I went on this rather, I hope, entertaining video critique of the From You Flowers company. But then I had to find a way to distill that into a Yelp review, and a lot of the language that I use in my video doesn't really translate as well to text. So I had to find a new way to write this that doesn't sound like my speaking style, because my speaking style often doesn't work in text. I've been running into this in a few different ways, actually. This year I'm focusing a lot more on transcribing my work, making sure there are subtitles available. Every video that I post has subtitles that I have already edited and refined. My podcast has a transcript in the show notes so that if anyone isn't able to listen to them or just doesn't like my voice, they have a way to read what I'm saying instead. It turns out that when I transcribe myself speaking, especially if I'm excited about something, I use a lot of run-on sentences. I use a lot of dangling modifiers and pronouns when I should use proper nouns because there's ambiguity and vagueness. And granted, that's me speaking off the cuff. Half the time it's in a conversation with someone else. And that means I have a very different conversational style than I would if I were just writing prose. But that just there, that was kind of a long sentence. I have a history of this, actually. I wrote about 4 years of articles for partialarc.com, including reviewing every episode of the Clone Wars and a weekly column about tabletop games like Dungeons & Dragons. A thing I'm pretty passionate about, for those who didn't know. I've had a podcast about it. I do TikToks about it. It's a whole thing. I've got a TikTok now, by the way. Follow me on there if that's a thing you like. And I've gone back and read some of those articles, and I have a hard time reading some of my old writing. And it's not that I disagree with anything I've said. Well, that's maybe not entirely accurate, but generally speaking, it's not me disagreeing with what the me of the past is talking about. It's just me reading these things and going, oh, oof, that's not a great way to write that. I write blogs every week on my website, michaeltchristensen.com, and sometimes I try to look at old blogs of mine and see if there's anything that I can lift or reference, but reading those old articles, I noticed that my writing style was a lot rougher, or at least it felt that way to me. But then again, maybe I'm going to feel that way in 5 more years when I go back and read these blogs. Although, I hope I don't. I think these blogs are well written, but that's part of the process of being a writer, is you go back and look at what you've done before and you think, oh, I was doing this wrong. And if you're lucky, you catch it before it's published. And passive voice is a big part of that. The flowers were not delivered. Very well written from a style perspective that makes it very clear what the focus is of the writing. It's that the action didn't happen. It makes it clear that there was an absence of something. But from a purely grammatical sense, the flowers were not delivered is not that great. From you flowers did not deliver the flowers, I guess is a little better. The problem there, of course, is that flowers appears twice. It's the name of the company. The flowers were not delivered. The flowers are the object. The subject, the person delivering it, isn't present at all. But that's part of my style. That's part of how I write, is by turns of phrase like that. I was expecting the flowers to be delivered. The flowers were not delivered. That works a little better because you have it in context of the style. When I'm wise and I actually pair it with context that makes my style more clear, I think the writing flows a little better. But this is not always what I do. And it's something that I have to be called out on multiple times by my beta readers. So how do I handle passive voice? How do I handle it in my writing? Well, the actual answer is I don't worry about it that much when I'm writing. Because remember what I said, hopefully you catch these things before it's published. This is why I need editors. It's why I need beta readers. It's why I need, line editors. It's why I need people to look at my writing and say, this is passive voice. You sure do this a lot. Rather than just saying you use passive voice a lot, I almost need someone to go line by line and say, this is passive voice, this is passive voice, this is passive voice. Because I don't always know what I'm looking for. Because I didn't learn this stuff. It doesn't come as naturally to me. I think I'm really good at writing dialogue, and all the things that make me good at writing dialogue contribute to my problems with prose. My prose, my actual narration has, I think, always been the weakest part of my writing. But, again, what I'm writing down is not the final draft. It sucks. It sucks when you write something and you know there's a problem with it, even if you don't know what it is. And it sucks when you write something and you know you have an ongoing problem, but you don't think about it while you're actually drafting. But also, that's okay. You don't have to think about every problem you have as a writer while you're doing the actual drafting. You have to think about it while you're outlining, and you have to think about it while you're editing. But when you're actually putting the words on the page, it's gonna get in your head. So my approach when I'm doing the prose in its raw form is to not worry about it. And then it's editing Mike's problem. And hopefully editing Mike is smarter than writing Mike and learns what passive voice is and how to actually look for it without being told where it is. Because that's what the editing part is for. And hopefully, with enough time, I will get to the point where I don't have to have it called out. I will start noticing it in the editing myself. And then, hopefully, I'll get to the point where I'm thinking about it unconsciously while I'm drafting. And I start actually just writing it differently. But again, as long as I have the time to edit and I take the time and I do it right, it's not the end of the world. So the idea behind this video was to talk about the ways I fight passive voice. And I don't really have any other than I have people I trust read my books. And you know what? That's the approach that's working for me right now. And eventually I should, take like an intro to creative writing class and relearn passive voice. But until then, I just need to surround myself with people who know stuff and are smarter than I am. That's just a generally pretty good idea anyway. Thank you so much for watching. I don't have a lot of actionable info here, but at least you can take the same course I can when dealing with your own writing issues, especially if they're grammar-based. And it's a pretty comprehensive fix if you have people you can trust. If you like the video, please hit the like button. If you have any similar problems in your writing, please let me know in the comments below. I have a passive voice problem, and others as well, I would assume. But what about you? Ooh, I also mess up tenses sometimes. Not as badly in prose as I do with articles, but it's a problem too. I mess up tenses sometimes. I'm just not a very good writer. If you'd like to see more videos like this, all my videos are a little bit like this, hit the subscribe button and you can see some more of them when they come out. The YouTube algorithm is also getting a little wacky, so please hit the bell. Otherwise, it might hide my videos from you because of the algorithm stuff. So hit the bell and you'll see them as soon as they come out. Thank you so much for watching. I love you, Victoria. Or, as I might say in my books, Victoria is loved by me. I have a problem.